Hey fam, it's Mariah, and welcome to Calvary Conversations, where we simplify God's word to reach today's culture by casting down arguments through real, radical testimonies and biblical conversations. Now let's get started. Welcome to Calvary Conversations. My name is Mariah, and today I am with my fiance, Ryan Harrington Riley. Woo! Yeah. I am excited to do this podcast with him because if you watched the other episode we did, we explained like how we met, and now today we're talking about our courtship and engagement because we're engaged. Yeah, and we are to be wed in March of 2023, so it's very exciting. Until that day, we are in boundary mode. So even though it looks like we're in a room alone, Trinity, my little sister, is in the other room, and she is our personal chaperone. So we'll explain all of that and what chaperones are and what she does and why we have chaperones. And yeah, so I guess we'll just start with where we left off on the other podcast, which was how you asked me.
Me telling you that I like you.
Yes, you like me a lot.
Yeah, that I like you a lot. And that I wanted to be more than friends, even though we were friends. Yeah. So from there, we started dating or courting, I guess. There's a difference between courtship. So I had I guess come to call Jesus Lord, just meaning like wanting to actually walk in obedience to what his word says versus just calling him Savior probably a year before that, a year and a few months. And so all that to say is that I had been in some dating relationships before that weren't very pure. And so praise the Lord for his grace and his patience. But so that's the so we'll talk a little bit about the boundaries and stuff and the reasons why how that looks and has looked.
Yeah. But right now, let's just explain to people what the beginning stages of a relationship looks like, because I think a lot of people think that's just like a fun time, but I think for us, like, it was pretty intense. Like we had a lot of fun, but I think the first 2 weeks, I think we explained this in the other podcast, we just texted in a group chat with my brother Morgan, who's Ryan's bestie, his friend, and then my sister-in-law Morgan's wife, Ravel. So that was the beginning.
Yeah, we didn't have to do that.
That was your decision.
Yeah, I just wanted to do that because I felt like I was like in a whirlwind of emotion, and so I didn't want to go off to the races too fast because you know how we talked about last time is something that I've thought was cool coming here, or maybe it's in a different podcast, but just that men minister to men, women minister to women. So whenever I was in a group chat with like a woman, there was like, you know, if Mariah texted me, Morgan would be in the group text, or like same thing with David or somebody else. And so that was refreshing to me because in the world, it's like you can say that you have good motives, but there can be kind of subliminal motives sometimes when you're reaching out to people, especially of the opposite sex, and then it just kind of gets murky. So it was refreshing to have that boundary. So that's what we kept going for the first couple of weeks of courting.
Yeah.
But then we started texting normally. And yeah, it was.
I think it was kind of after you. Is that before or after you told me you love me? Like 2 weeks. I remember it was 4th of July. It was March 17th, which I remember it was St. Patrick's Day. And you told me that. And we started courting on March 8th, a day after Trinity's birthday. And then, so how long was that? Like a little over a week? So. And then what did I say? I think I just said it too. Yeah. And then I spun around in the chair. Yeah. And I just remember that we started pretty early with like distinctives of like why we're going to do what we're doing, because I think it would be easy for us to lose track of like, are we doing this because my family, as in like my parents and, you know, Morgan and my brother Cannon and their wives, like they waited, or are we going to do it because like we want to do this between the Lord, us and the Lord? And so I think everyone probably just thinks like, oh, you have to do it. But I remember my mom, before she passed away, she told me, she's like, Mariah, every other person that you've been with, I've kind of like wanted you to really have boundaries because I didn't think they were the one. But ultimately, like, you're an adult and you can make your own decisions of what you want to do. And she was even talking about everything, which that's weird coming from my mom. She's very strict. And it was really cute. Some nights when Ryan's over late and with the whole family, we're getting tired, my mom's like, go home, go to bed. And I was like, Mom, you're being mean to Ryan. But she cared. Like, we know, like, nothing good happens when you're tired and you're not on guard and it's late at night, even if there's people around. So I just think that a thing to do is, if you're in a relationship or thinking about it, is to not just do it to look good. Like, oh, we're not doing this and that and like being religious, but doing it and asking the Lord and finding verses. So I think that's what we did. Do you remember like when we did the Google Doc and then that one got deleted, but we like wrote down verses of like distinctives of why we're going to do or why we're not going to do certain things? Yeah, I think one of the
main ones is one of Mariah's favorite verses, which is 2 Timothy 2:22, which is flee anything that stimulates youthful lust.
Pursue like righteousness, faith, love, and then enjoy the companionship of those who call on the Lord with pure hearts.
Yeah, so to me, that fleeing youthful lust is just like that's Jesus' standard is always like blows anything out of the water of that's flesh. So yeah, it's not a bunch of rules with courting, but it's like in our walk with the Lord, how do we want it to look? And we want it to be like totally just walking by the Spirit, so you do not gratify the desires of the flesh. And so putting up structures and boundaries that help walk that out. And so it is something that you can easily, you can get legalistic about, of like, oh no, this, that, I can't, it's only hand holding, or, but it's really just something where it's for anybody who's doing courting or wants to pursue a pure relationship, that we just need to abide and put Jesus first in our relationships and ask him how we're doing.
Yeah.
And ask him to search us and ask him like, okay, is this stimulating youthful lust? And I think at least for me, I think for a lot of us, we'll be really surprised at what stimulates youthful lust, because for me, like, it's just it's like, I feel like sometimes things that stimulate youthful lust is like a lot less than, the world might say, but that's normal in our walk with Christ. I think things that the Lord is working out in us and is leading us in whatever area of life, whether that's at work or with drinking coffee or whatever he's convicting and leading on the world. And other people might say, no, that's weird, don't do that. But at the end of the day, we're going to be standing before Christ, accountable for how we walked it out. So
yeah, and it makes me think of something that Pastor JP said from the Becoming Something podcast, and he was saying that like when it talks about anything that stimulates youthful lust, he's like, basically, and without being too graphic, is like if your body's preparing for sex, and I'm pretty sure, unless you're like younger, most people knows what that means. And so for that, I think that, like you were saying, Ryan, is that it's a lot easier to justify things because we're not having sex or we're not making out. But like for us, I remember our first date was with Morgan and Vel, and we were sitting on the couch and they were like making food and they're still like watching us, but we're just sitting there, and I think I had my legs crossed and like my knee was touching Ryan's knee, and I was like, I can't even do that right now. Like, that's too much. Like, and I know that. But to anyone else, they're like, oh, that's nothing. But I knew that that was too much, you know, like that was, you know, arousing things or stimulating youthful lust. And so I know that sounds legalistic, but again, like you said, we just have to stand before God, and God knows what is going on inside of us. And also just looking at that as a beautiful thing. Like when you are married, like how amazing that is. Like we heard this one story of this woman who her husband was the only one who's ever seen her hair or something like that. Cause she like would wear the, what is that? Muslim cultures wear it, and like, I don't know.
Hijab.
Yeah. And so, but to them, like that made everything for them so much more intimate in the relationship. And so, not that you have to do that, but I'm just saying that I think it is important to realize, like Pastor JP or someone had quoted or said, they're like, I would be concerned if you guys are making out and you don't like get aroused. You know what I mean? Like that's weird. Like that's weird if you're not. And yeah, that doesn't always have to happen. But I'm just saying, like, if most of us are honest, it's the weirdest or littlest things that can. And so like what Ryan and I do, like sometimes if I'm like too close to him or hugging him, he just like will adjust or like move. And like initially as a woman, because my number one love language is physical touch, I feel like rejected, like, oh, he doesn't like me or he's mad at me. But it's the opposite. So sometimes the joke that I would say is, no, you really, really like me. So like I gotta stay away from you. But it's a good thing in marriage. But right now, the verse I want to read is in 2 Timothy, and it's 2 Timothy, or I think it's 1 Timothy 5. I'll just start in 1. It says, do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father, younger men as brother, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters, in all purity. So I think looking at that verse, we've said it before, but just Ryan has called me sometimes like, oh, my sister, because right now I am his sister in Christ because we're not married and we're not one. So technically it's like, you wouldn't kiss your sister or make out or do like sexual things. So why would you do that with a person you're dating or even engaged to now? Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, we're engaged, so we know we're getting married. But a lot of engagements break up. And also, you're not married. So don't act like you are. But anyway, I like that verse. Did you have any?
Something to tell me?
What?
I'm just kidding.
Nope. I always tell Ryan, I was like, you're going to have to leave me or the Lord's going to have to tell us. But another thing, this is a side note. The cool thing about boundaries is, let's just say the Lord, like, let's just say it was on the day of our wedding. Both of us felt like the Lord was saying, like, not to get married, that we could still be friends. Or maybe it'd be a little weird as friends, maybe, but we could still go to church together because we didn't like cross certain boundaries. Yeah, it'd be painful and difficult. But if we were to like have sex and become one, that would be like difficult. And so I think that it's just really cool, like hands wide open. Like my dad says, like, if you're on your wedding day, before you get married, like don't marry someone if you don't feel from the Lord and have peace. Like, I was about to say rain check, like just do it another time or something. I know people get cold feet and all that, but this is the biggest decision besides your like choosing Jesus and accepting him. Like this is the biggest decision people will make in their life. Like this is a covenant, a commitment. And so a lot of people take it lightly because they just think, oh, I can get divorced. But like God hates divorce. And for us, that's not going to be an option. So that's why we really have to make sure that we know there's going to be hard times, but we don't like use that as like an escape route. So sorry, that was a lot. As you can tell, I'm the talker of the relationship and Ryan's really good at listening.
So what's been your favorite part?
My
favorite memory
part. Okay, so my favorite memory, maybe just because yesterday was kind of a rough day for me, being the first technically holiday, even though we don't celebrate Halloween, but like Harvest Festival. So October 31st, today's November 1st. And I was really struggling with, you know, missing my mom. And I remember her wearing this shirt, but yellow. And just like, I don't know, it was like weird because like she was just there last year and I was taking pictures with her and like we're having a great time. And then she's like not there this year. So I think that really hit me. But all that to say, I think my favorite memories were my memories with you and my mom and like just being able to like take care of her when she was passing away because Ryan owns an assisted living. And so she stayed there, I think 3 days or 2.5 before she passed away at Heritage Oaks. And you took care of her. Ryan gave her her medication. And my mom at the very end, Ryan, I didn't know this, but it was just you and her, right? And you asked her.
And Carrie.
And Carrie. What did you ask? You can say it. I don't want to.
I think I said, and my heart was beating fast when I said it, but I said something like, Carrie can probably clarify, but I said something like, Mrs. Roders, I think I would like to marry your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think? And she just did a big smile and she said yes. She said, I think you, and I was like,
No doubt in my mind or something.
Yeah, something like that.
That you're the one.
Yeah. And she gave her blessing. And I also asked, like, if, just what the timing was that she would want. And she said, she wants it to be however the Lord leads it to happen. So
yeah, to not rush it.
Yeah, not rush it or rush it if God wants it to, to be rushed. But she said to just
God's timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really special. And then I think it was a couple hours later, she was starting to like go downhill pretty fast and like she wasn't talking a lot, but I was able to ask her because I didn't know that you had talked to her. And I was like, Mom, do you think that Ryan and I should get married one day? And she was like, yes. She said, of course. And then I was like, are you sure? And she's like, right now. And I think that was it. And then for me, I think that was the last I really heard her talk before she passed away, probably like maybe like, I don't know how many hours later. That was in the morning, and then the afternoon she passed away. And so I think that was just very special because like not a lot of people, get their parents' blessings. Not everyone does. Not that you have to get it by the mom because like my dad gave you his blessing, but it was really special to me. And it was also special because, my mom did play a big role in my life with helping me stay pure and like wanting to wait. And, sometimes I got mad at her and I was like, you're being so strict and like all this stuff. But my parents are pretty good at telling me like their past and how my parents, like before they were married, like they had slept together and then my dad broke up with her and he felt from the Lord, like, if you sleep with her again, like she's going to get pregnant. And I think there's drinking involved. And then he slept with her another time and then they broke up. But then she found out she was pregnant and with Morgan. And so at that moment, my dad was realizing he would have never gotten married because he had a bad home life. He didn't have good parents or really any, and he didn't have any siblings. So he just didn't know how to be with kids. And so God, like Romans 8:28, God worked all things together. Like he worked that together, knowing my dad would have never got married. That was my mom's first boyfriend. But like, even through all that, there's pain in the fact of like, there's still consequences to sin, even though God redeemed it and they got married, and realizing like love is a choice. It's not a feeling. But at the same time, my parents, I just love that they were so honest with us. And that's why my dad's like, don't be alone. Like they tried so hard. They didn't have any accountability at the church, but they on their own would try not to meet alone. And then if they did, they met like car by car, but then it just kept, going like more
especially
lenient.
because going back to the late at night thing, they had to do it late at night because your dad was in ministry.
Yeah.
So
that
was the only time that they had.
Yeah. And so I think I just really look up to my parents for being honest with us, even though that's like not a fun thing to share. But I think that's why us kids like chose to like save our first kiss or these things, not to be like, oh, we're better than other people, but because we saw the pain that my parents had at the times of the relationship, like you had to marry me, or, you didn't really want to because it's just because I got pregnant and you could have had so much better. And so the marriages, my dad said, like Kevin and Rachel who waited and Morgan and Vel, like just seeing how close they are now. Because it really, even if you've been with someone before, right? That's Vel's story. And they share their love story, and we'll put that in the link below. But like they themselves, Morgan and Vel, waited for each other. So even if you have a past, because I think a lot of people out there are like, oh, well, I can't wait because I have a past, and that's your story. But the Lord redeems. I don't think it's like, oh, I get my virginity back, but you do get your purity back. Like the Lord purifies you. And also you can start today. Like even if you're right now sleeping with your boyfriend or girlfriend, like you can start today with these boundaries. Not saying that's going to be easy, and maybe you might have to.
It will not be easy.
You know, like it's not going to be easy. That's true. I'm sorry. But it's going to be rewarding in the end, because most marriages that are people that live together before they're married, like the percentage of divorce is like through the roof. It's a lot higher than those who wait. And so anyway, I was saying a lot more, but what is your favorite memory? So that's one of mine, with the memories I have with you and my mom. And one time we were at Starbucks and she told us like all her advice of having babies. No, that sounds weird. Birthing babies. No, she didn't give us that talk, but just because she had all of us 4 kids naturally, no epidural, less than 3 pushes. So she was giving us like advice and stuff. And that was a really sweet moment and memory to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about
me?
you?
It was a new experience of knowledge. I had no idea anything about any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was a very special memory. I was not thinking about that. I don't know. I think I don't know. Had a lot of different
not
things.
Not much happened in these.
There's been a lot just going to on hikes with Trinity, or out to church with the young adults, or you come over to my family's house, or dealing with hard things and fighting and then praying and seeing the Lord resolve it. And it's there's this, I like what you said about not about the purity thing, because that was my experience in past relationships. Like I was talking with somebody the other day who they were saying like I think I realized that when you start to add in the sexual element to a relationship before it's time, that's you add, like, because you're not married, you add lust into the equation, and it like clouds your judgment.
Yeah.
And so there's this Song of Solomon 5. It says it a couple times, but it's a little bit steamy. But so it says 5:2, I sleep, but my heart is awake. This is a woman talking. It is the voice of my beloved. He knocks, saying, so he's saying, open for me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is covered with dew, my locks with the drops of the night.
They were married.
They were married there. But he says it earlier too. He calls her his sister.
Yeah.
And so I just like that picture of, because I have sisters, and it's a different dynamic when you add lust in the equation versus like having it be pure, and one that I've never experienced before, because I have, had relationships with people that weren't healthy and were not God honoring.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but like you're saying, just having we're turning from sin, but I just like the picture of it's not necessarily what we're turning from, but who we're turning to and what we're running towards. It's both. And so just running towards the hope of a God honoring, beautiful relationship where there is purity, and like we can just
like we're a bunch of goofballs.
Yeah.
And right now, I think that my favorite part of our relationship is that we are best friends. Like, you're my best friend, and you're also my brother, and you're also, when we're married, will be my love, how it says lover. And so I think that it's just like looking forward to the future. It's not like we're trying to take out these things, because what people do for diets is like, I can't eat this and I can't eat that, and that's how they look at the rules. Like, can't do this, can't do that, you can't be alone, you can't I don't text them certain things, you can't, I don't know, kiss them and touch and whatever. So they feel like that's like super lame in relationship. Like, how can you have fun then? How can you just like get to know them? How do you know they're the one unless you, like how people say it, why would you buy a car without test driving it? Which is not wise advice.
God has made our bodies
You'll be
to
fine.
be able to go that direction with sex and that kind of thing. And so I don't think that's
And
something.
you'll grow together in it.
But
once
it
you're
is
married.
something that I think a lot of people get attacked
Kind
with.
of on. Yeah, that's their
I mean,
main
we've
thing.
talked about that before, you know, like
Yep.
just that lie of the enemy that says like,
Yeah.
oh, we need to, like, what if, you know, I don't know, but it's God will take care of it just like he does everything else for those who seek him first in his kingdom and his righteousness.
Yeah. I was listening to this podcast of this couple for 5 years. They couldn't like basically have sex, and it didn't really work for them. And it was just painful and all this stuff. And so they really gave that to the Lord. But the cool thing is the Lord was refining things in them. Whereas if they had the best in marriage, sex life and all this, they probably would ignore those things. But then when they really submitted to the Lord and the Lord spoke to them to change certain things, I think 9 months or 8 months or less than a year later, they found out they're pregnant. So it's like, and they were able to, you know. And so that to me shows that even if you could think it's like the worst case scenario and something bad happens, like, cry out to the Lord. He created marriage. He created sex. It's just crazy, because something like that, you're like, what? Because you've seen the perversion we've seen, but the Lord created that male and female. He created that. And even those like times where, you know, you're having a rough day and that, like, going to that person, and the Lord gave you that as that to enjoy each other. But until that day, like you would say, right? These boundaries, it's not easy. Like for Ryan and I, we have to be pretty strict and like recalibrate at times, because sometimes we're like, okay, we're fine, we can like hug longer, and then Ryan's like, no, like we can't, like just a quick side hug. We call it the Belle and Morgan used to do this. It's the I love you side hug. So you just say like, you hug them the side, you're like, I love you so much. Okay, that's it. But to people that's weird, but like for us, I look at it.
Understandably, that's like kind of, I mean, if I look at it, it is kind of.
It's weird.
It is weird. But like from
the world's perspective, it's very weird. And I think it's weird myself because I like physical touch. So I'm like, why? But if I really care about Trinity, camera, if I really care about Ryan, then that won't bother me. You know, if I really care about you and caring about your purity and protecting you, because we also have to be very honest with each other how one another's doing. So sometimes like we'll ask each other, how are you doing purity wise? And so then he'll tell me like, hey, when this happened or you did this, like that was too much for me, so just not do that again. Or then I'll share things that were like too much for me. One thing is we've been doing like country dancing and then we've been like practicing for our like wedding and like dancing. Not practicing for our wedding, dancing. And for us, we're like, you know what? We're going to have to do the far apart 2-step because the closer one's just too much for us. And it's okay. Like, we will humbly admit that.
We definitely had a good instructor, though.
Yes, he's a great instructor. Shout out to Andrew.
His name's Andrew, and he came fully decked out with belt buckle, cowboy boots, and a black hat. It was all black. It was awesome.
It's awesome. So what I've been realizing with our relationship is we can still have fun. Like, we have so much fun. We both love sports. We love watching movies. We do not. I do not. That's a joke. It's an inside joke. Ryan likes watching movies, but I'm not. That's not my favorite thing. But the main thing is, like, I think we just like doing ministry together and serving together. And we've been doing premarital counseling with Morgan and Valley right now. And I think we've been just realizing how how much God knew we were supposed to be together because we like similar things. Not that it's always like that, but like life for us by the grace and strength of God is not going to be easy, but I feel like it's kind of going to be simple. And I think that's the word that I would say. It's like it's going to be simple, and not that, like, again, it's not going to be easy. If anything, our relationship's probably going to be very difficult with life of ministry, but I think it's going to be really cool as we have those like common interests in the Lord and fun things even to do. Like, I feel like that's really going to help us, but not that you need to be clones. Like Ryan and I are very different, but compatible. I think that's the word.
And God will take care of that.
Yeah. Compliment.
We don't need to, I mean, I did not ever in a million years anticipate that I was going to be dating and marrying Mariah. So I'm thankful. But I was just thinking, we were just talking earlier about an idea of in marriage of just doing like Fortnite. I don't know why I thought
Fortnite. Of that sounds like the game people play.
Yeah, no, not the video game, but like just making little play forts, you know, like you did when you were a kid and hiding in there with the flashlight and stuff.
Yes.
That sounds fun. Because
for us, I think even though we know life's going to be difficult, like it's good to laugh. And it's good.
Whispering.
Whispering?
Yeah.
Yes.
Whispering in the fort.
Mm-hmm. But we really...
You got the chocolate milk.
Got the chocolate. I'll go get it. And I think that we know that even though life, I've said it so many times, is a mess, it's difficult, it's frustrating. Ryan and I, like he said before, we fight at times. No one freak out. I know that's scary to people, like that word. And I wouldn't even say we're just fighting because, oh, I don't like you and all this stuff. It's because like we are fighting for like a solution. Like, what do we do in this situation? And I'm really thankful for you for having patience with me, because I know that for me, sometimes I'm like, let's deal with this now. And I can't wait 5 minutes. Like, let's deal with it now. And you're like, let's wait and pray about it. So we've been really helping each other and like going to the Lord. And Ryan's really good at like praying and waiting on the Lord. But at the end of those quote unquote fights or disagreements that we're like working, I think a lot of them are miscommunications, because a lot of our communication is through phone calls, which is difficult because we don't see each other in person. And if we do, there's other people around. So phone calls and there's miscommunications. And I realize that's when we really hash it out. But every time afterwards, I feel so much closer to you.
Amen. Yeah.
So what would you say with that? Usually, people hear that.
What?
If people hear like, oh, Ryan fight, and they're like, then that must be bad, what would you say to people? Because there's bad fighting. Like if you're fighting to be right.
I'd say everything is built on the Lord. And so just going back to his word, it reminds me of the verse where he says, like, he who does not gather with me scatters. And he says that, don't be lukewarm or he'll spit you out of his mouth. So he wants you to be hot or cold, the Lord does. And so just the idea that's hit God's way. And so a relationship, there's no like middle ground, I don't think. I think you're either going away from each other or closer to each other. And you have to fight for a good relationship.
Yeah.
And so I've also heard somebody say that we're designed to grind and that marriage isn't for your happiness, it's for your holiness. And so, yeah, just realizing that it's okay that there's going to be stuff that comes up and it's hard, but Jesus says the way is narrow and hard and few are those who find it. So, having that in mind. And it can be hard when selfishness and pride and all that stuff gets into the situation, which happens with me. But I think when we invite the Lord into the situation and pray on our own and then come back, God's peace and his fruits of the Spirit come into it, and he works it out. So he helps us to really sort it out.
That's good. Another verse that I want to read is like, I love the whole chapter of Colossians 3 I was reading today. But it made me think of, this is more of like we're talking about before with like impurity. It says, Colossians 3, starting in verse 5, put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you. Which we all have earthly things, like by the things we listen to, the things we watch, that the people are around. Sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desires, covetousness, which is idolatry. On account of these things, the wrath of God is coming. So, how I look at it too is the Bible talks a lot against sexual morality, and that's anything that is not in marriage, in the covenant of marriage, even if for those who are married and, you know, looking at pornography or, you know, cheating on their husband or wife. I think that
Which
even lust
is cheating.
Yeah. So even looking at, the Bible says, if you look at another woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. So how we protect from that, like Ryan said, is not by just don't do this, but it's by pursuing Jesus. It's by running to Jesus, making sure Ryan has a quiet time, which I'm not the best at, but trying to, in a relationship, to encourage each other to go to the Lord instead of each other. Because if Ryan gets all his fulfillment and, you know, satisfaction and comfort in me, like I'm gonna let him down every single day, and we've found that out.
Like
but if you find it,
2 takes and no dog.
What?
Like somebody said, there's 2 takes and no dog.
There you go.
Two takes trying to suck life from each other, but there's no source.
No thing to do that from. And so why we really have to encourage each other in that is because, like, we know that at the end of the day, like, I'm gonna have to stand before the Lord and give an account to the Lord, not blame Ryan or say, but Ryan, or this or that. Like, I'm gonna have to stand before the Lord by myself and give an account. But the thing is like, I encourage you also to read 1 Corinthians 7, because it talks a lot about marriage and those who are married to live as though they're single. Because when you think about it, I could pass away before Ryan. And if I did, and I was Ryan's everything, then you could be shipwrecked and like, what do I do? But if you are going to be sad, like, I mean, it's difficult, but know that you'll see me one day in heaven. Not that you're looking forward to me, you're looking forward to Jesus, but that's a cherry on top. But you know that, okay, I'm married to Jesus. It's easier for women to believe that because, like, the bride. But for men, what perspective would you give on, like, intimacy with Jesus and knowing him and, you know, standing before him and his judgment one day? How would you, like, that's two different things, intimacy and judgment. But
I mean, I think it might seem easier, but I don't think it is easier for women.
mm-hmm.
I mean,
they
maybe
want a tangible person.
Maybe I just don't know what it's like for women, but I'm pretty stoked about being the bride of Christ.
Yeah, Ryan's. I love that that's what I love about you, because most guys like, that's weird, but I see that, like, that doesn't freak you out because you're such a man. It's like real men wear pink. That's how I look at you.
No,
it's true.
No, the only good stuff in me comes from the Lord.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think it's just, I don't know.
It's okay. I put him on the spot.
No,
I was just saying, like, what does it look like when you think of, like, standing before God and his judgment one day, not fearing me, you know, and, like, being like, oh, I have to spend all my life, like, worrying about Mariah, intimacy with her, which the Bible does say that because your body's not your own when you're married. But what would you say to people who are, like, maybe like have idolatry, like making their significant other an idol, but then, like, realizing I'm gonna have to stand before God one day? What does that look like for you, I guess?
I mean, I understand that. I'm pretty sure I've done that. I've done that with you.
Me too.
And I think you definitely do that when you incorporate sexual morality into the situation. So I think I've done that in the past too but I think that, I don't know, the verse that's coming to my head is the one where Jesus is telling the parable about the king or somebody who invites to the wedding or to the feast. and there's 3 people who provide excuses, and one says I can't go because I just got married.
Yeah.
And so literally they don't go. Basically he's saying, you say no to what I've provided you. You're saying you're rejecting, a relationship with me, and probably that person didn't go to heaven because they're idolizing their spouse and saying no to the call of God on their life. So, yeah, I mean, that's a terrifying thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think every relationship that we have is a ministry relationship.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that we'll do a podcast another time more about like the engagement season and like what we have been doing with premarital, and like it's easy to focus on the wedding instead of the marriage. So just advice for people who are engaged. But like right now we got engaged in August and it's November and we have like 5 more months. But
well, I have a question for you.
Okay.
What would you say to somebody who is either in a relationship or who wants to be in a relationship, and like what steps would you say for courting? What would they do? Like what would be some good boundaries to have?
Yeah.
What and how do they walk that out? Like we have, Trinity spends a lot of time with us, or people at the church. So, but I just, sometimes people don't have people who they can always have with them while they're going on dates and stuff.
Yeah.
So what would you say?
I would say definitely get an accountability partner. So what that would look like would be if you have someone at your church who is maybe more mature than you, maybe they're married, and I would say definitely don't get someone who's also struggling and in a relationship, but get someone who you see their life and they're living a life of purity. Not that they're perfect, but ask them to hold you accountable. So what my dad used to do for Kevin and Rachel, because, they didn't always have chaperones, and they wouldn't drive in the car together because when you're alone like that and there's no people, things can happen. That they wouldn't be in like a room alone together. But sometimes they would go on dates like to dinner or something in a public place where there's people around. And so at the end of the night, my dad called Kevin or texted him or whatever and asked, how was it? Like, are you okay? How are you purity wise? And he would have to share. You could obviously lie. And I think the thing that we realize with courting and now engagement is that if you don't fear God, by now Ryan and I could have easily had sex and,
kick the bucket.
Yes, kick the bucket.
That's actually means something else.
That means pass away.
Yeah.
But yes, we could have definitely
kick the tires.
Kick the tires. That's the word. But I think what we have to realize is we need to fear God, not fear people. Because if you're fearing people, like you can totally deceive people. And there's so many loopholes to things that we can just do and sneak. But we need to remember the eyes of God are watching us. So accountability in that way, if you don't have a chaperone, I think that's really good. And also with the person, really writing down distinctives and boundaries and things like, hey, I don't want to arouse love before it's time. So these are the things that arouse me and stuff. So we need to not do this. And that could be as simple as like, I can't like massage your arm or like your back or this, which I mean, for sure that's gonna, maybe just for us, it can be arousing. So for us, we can't do that. Like we did that before and we're like, we can't do that. So as you're courting, realize that you're going to have to be switching your boundaries. And I think the closer to marriage, what Ryan and I are realizing, we have to be more intense with our boundaries. Like this one couple I was listening to, they used to kiss, but when they got engaged, they're like, we can't kiss anymore. Like not even a peck on their lips, because they were like, it just made our mind and the thoughts like go all these places because you're about to go to that day. So I would say get accountability, fear God, not people, and write out those boundaries and just give like a daily or weekly checkup with that person and you. And if your accountability partners are not really checking in on you, like you do the part and you ask them, hey, can you guys, or maybe get someone better who will. But
pray,
with your
pray for somebody better.
Exactly.
Because God will honor that.
And let
request.
people at church and around you, like your family, because how it was back in the days, the family would be around. And you might not have a family or good family, so I understand that. But the church family, right? Like do things with a group and like get fun events and stuff. But like what Morgan and Vel did too, which is really sweet, which we have yet to do. But they would go on a date, like a little dinner date, and then everyone else would be like eating and talking together. And that sometimes you might seem like you guys are being clean, like what is it, not clingy, I guess clingy to each other, or selfish, like we're taking this time. But I feel like you kind of have to sometimes like fight for that time when you can, but make sure you're ministering first and just be spirit led. But also phone calls I think are good, but try not to do late night, not talk about things that are intimate.
If you're doing, if you're doing, at least for us, if you're doing it in such a way that like you are putting up boundaries, it can make it difficult to have, time alone. So it can feel selfish, but I think
they understand.
Yeah.
A lot of people I've talked to, like they understand. If anything, my friends are like, "Oh, I feel bad to talk to you because like I know you don't really get that time with Ryan," and I'm like, no, it's okay. But I think Ryan and I, that we have a date, like I would be saying right now, if you don't know if you can marry that person and you haven't talked about marriage, like you shouldn't be with them. Because if you're just dating to date, that's kind of playing with fire. But if you're, not that you know for a fact, like 100% you're going to marry that person, but I would say with Ryan compared to anyone else I've ever liked, like.
Not in the beginning of the courting process though.
I would say that you know that if you, I would say at least, not that you know you're going to marry them, but you could see yourself marrying them.
Yeah.
Because if I couldn't see myself marrying you, then that would be weird. So I would take some more time being your friend and like kind of getting to know you with other people around. But I would say also try not to find someone who's a fixer-upper, like, oh, one day when we're married, he'll change. But like marry someone who, if you marry them today, they never changed, that you'd be okay. So, yeah, that was a lot. But
no, those are good. And I would say the only thing I would add would be on the distinctives that you write down. I thought something that really helped me was when you write out like just building any boundaries that you have off the Word of God.
Yeah, not just. Yeah.
And off of these verses or other verses that you find, because then you can really like, firmly plant your feet on that. It's like it says he builds his house on a rock. Even though the storms come and temptations come and like, oh, we're in a fight and like all this stuff, but it's like, no, this is God's word. And it's worth it, and it's gonna be good.
Yep, not easy, but it's gonna be good one day, and we're having fun. I'm gonna be missing these days too when we're married. Like this time, even though we're like, oh, this is terrible. Like we need to enjoy this season. Before kids and all that. Like this is a good season. So, and just before I'm out of the house and you are, like, just enjoy that with our family. So it's gonna be good. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us. Ryan, do you got anything else you want to share with the listeners?
Not that I can think of.
We love you guys. And if you haven't already, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. If you like to listen to us wherever you get podcasts, just type in Calvary Conversations. You can also check out our behind the scenes on Instagram at Calvary Conversations, and check out our new website, which Christian Sanchez designed. It's calvaryconversations.com. And if you would like to support this podcast, we're a listener-supported podcast. You can do that in the description below that says donate. Thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you next week.